TIFU by imitating someone I seriously admire and making him realize he learnt his mannerisms from the person he hated the most. So I'm really good at imitating people. Like, seriously good. I don't imitate celebrities or athletes, just normal people in my everyday life. I'd cry or how I do it, but I guess I just learn an individual's mannerisms, gestures, expressional patterns, etc. As I grew older, I started refusing to do impressions as I noticed some individuals were getting offended. Some have even stopped talking to me. It wasn't my intention to upset them, but oh well. I was invited for Christmas lunch at a friend's place. They also invited an elderly Russian couple who I've known for a long while. They're in their late 70s. He is a world-renowned mathematician. As a math nerd, I have a man crush on him. Anywho, between the champagne and cordials, I was pushed to imitate my friend and his wife for the Russian couple. I gave in, delivered, and everyone laughed. Then the mathematician says, "All right, my turn, my turn. Imitate me next." I declined several times, out of respect, but he insisted. So I acquiesced. I did my impression of him, very detailed as I'm familiar with his gestures. My impressions are never cartoonish or over the top, rather subtle and low-key. So, I did my best him. Everyone was laughing but him. When we noticed he wasn't laughing, we all realized he was standing, with his hands deep in his pockets, looking beyond the pale. Then he spoke up, terrified. "Why did you do that? How did you know?" We were all confused. I felt my stomach drop. Before we could react, he said, "You just made the most impeccable imitation of my grandfather. How did you know him?" I had, of course, never met his grandfather. He was just carrying himself in a manner identical to the person he hated the most. Then, it sank in that, for whatever reason, genetics, nurture, subconscious yearning, etc., his gestures and mannerisms were those of his alcoholic, abusive, anti-Semitic grandfather. The mathematician's mother happened to be Jewish. Out of all the grandkids, he was the only Jewish one. He was on the receiving end of all his grandfather's hatred and abuse. He excused himself and rushed to the door, his wife trying to catch up behind him, exclaiming something in Russian. Pretty sure I butternut him up really good. Doctor, I am really good at doing impressions of people I know in my daily life. Imitated a professor I admire only to realize he got his mannerisms from the person he absolutely hated the most, his evil grandpa. Edit, have to clarify, the mathematician himself is a loving, caring husband and father. His demeanor is calm and collected. Only his mannerisms are apparently the same. Edit 2, didn't expect this to blow up. Talked to my friend's wife this morning. She hasn't heard back from the mathematician or his wife. Her and my friend are baffled as I am. No one is blaming me, thank God. Also, she recalls his questions as "Why would you do that?" instead of my recollection of "How did you know?" Update, his wife spoke to my friend's wife. He is pretty destroyed but wants me to know he doesn't have any ill feelings towards me. It was just one of those freak things. To those asking who he is, understand that I cannot obviously disclose who he is. Most I'm willing to say is that he's a professor at a major mid-Atlantic university. To those asking why I do this, learn someone's mannerisms to the point of effectively imitating them. I honestly have no idea how/why my mind just picks up this info. Don't even practice impersonations much. I just think of the person and act out how my memory remembers them. Don't blame yourself too much. Just like general appearance, mannerisms often seem to carry over to other generations as well. Not sure how, as it doesn't seem like something that is carried over by genes. But I've been told by family sometimes my gestures and posture remind them of my father, even though he died when I was 10 and I can never have picked up much of it consciously. What a power you have, you're like a soul mirror. I have a young cousin who looks like the spit of our late grandfather, and his rage to boot. Your math man is going to have to realize, sooner or later, he's not his grandfather. Only his mannerisms are apparently the same. I hope you get a chance to say that to him. We are influenced by our caregivers whether we want it or not. I hope he finds solace in the notion of taking what he wanted and leaving the rest when it comes to his grandfather. You seem like a kind person and math dude seems like someone you really admire and respect. So if I were you, I would reach out and let him know that he isn't his grandfather. Even though he may have some small mannerisms in the way that he talks or moves or eats or whatever, clearly as someone you respect deeply. He can't be anywhere near the same as his grandfather. It's important to have him know that people look up to him as a role model or mentor because he has probably been living with a fear in the back of his mind that he might not be a kind enough person, or that he might be similar to a man that he hates. At least he can work on these feelings now. TIFU by not believing my son heard bees. Some of you really liked my FU about the zucchini with the kids, so thought I'd share another. Could probably have a whole dad series, though not sure I should brag about that. In our last house, we moved a couple years back now, one of my sons told me he would hear bees at night. Both my kids were at the time basically terrified of bees. Neither had ever been stung, so I never quite understood the fear they had. Regardless though, I fully believed he was just having nightmares. So naturally I told him over and over he was dreaming and he needed to stop worrying about bees. Over the course of the next week or so, my wife and I did start to see/find bees around the house. It wasn't like an obnoxious amount, but even like one every other day starts to feel like a bit much. That said, it was an older house with some crappy screens that needed patching, so we just kind of wrote it off as them finding a way in through those holes when we had the windows open. We had a few flowering bushes, so that seemed fairly plausible, as there'd often be a lot of bees around that time of the season. So an extremely relevant part of the story should be mentioned now. I have been a long time sufferer of insomnia. I don't like to take prescription meds regardless, nor would my doctor advise taking them long term. But I would hit periods of time where they were required just to keep me functioning. This happened to be one of those times. So now, one night, me and the wife are in bed. Likely it was some combo of reading and playing on phones, but it was late and mostly quiet, and we both swore we heard something. It sounded like something was running, like a small appliance or something, so I went downstairs. I wasn't even halfway down the stairs though and knew nothing was going downstairs. Went back up, and the sound was definitely still happening. I stood by the boys' rooms and didn't hear anything. At some point we became aware it was not down or on the same level as us, but it was up. We had a 2-story home, with an attic above, accessible only by a small hatch door in my wife's closet. So she clears some space and pushes on the door, at which time probably around 10 to 20 yellow jackets come swarming down. Beyond them in the dark, some unknown amount of bees are buzzing away, which is what we heard. It's crazy late now, I'm highly medicated on sleeping pills, and we don't want to scare the kids getting them out of the house in a panic. We took care of the bees we saw come out, and planned on calling a local place immediately in the morning to come out. Scary thought, but seemed like the only option. Over the course of the night now, I kept waking up with shooting pains. I would wake up in complete agony, sit up for a second, and then fall right back asleep due to the medication. I remembered it happening several times. When we woke up in the morning I was telling my wife about it, and she told me I was dreaming, and having nightmares because I was scared of what we found that night. Of course, then I go to get up, throw the sheets off, and I'm surrounded by dead yellow jackets. They totally were still getting out of the attic door, or we missed some. Then they were literally getting under the covers and stinging me. Had somewhere between 6 to 10 bee stings over arms, legs, and back. Followed through on calling a company in town, who came out and found hundreds to thousands of yellow jackets in the attic. Never told the kids. Moved since as well, but swear that was unrelated. TL, doctor, son said he heard bees at night but told him it was a dream. Found we had hundreds plus bees in attic which came out and stung me all night while I was on sleeps meds. Edit number 1, just a quick note. I've been hitting some comments below, but to be clear these were yellow jackets and not bees. Apologies for using terms interchangeably, as I legit did not know they weren't a variation of bees. In regards to them being dead, since yellow jackets don't die after a sting, I have to believe my restless sleep ended them. If I was jerking awake when stung, I'm positive I was rolling around and likely swatting them in my sleep. Death by smushing seems very plausible to me given the situation, i.e. they were stuck under the covers. Someone below made a great explanation that the scent of the wasps we got during the night probably lingered on me, drawing them into bed to attack. Hope that hits may of the questions for you all. This was a wild ride. When I was a kid we had a yellow jacket infestation in our basement, had to have been hundreds of the little cheesecake everywhere. Yeah, and they are just nasty things too, man. Sweet justice that you got stung and not the boys. I fully agree. But it's crazy late now. Oh sweet Jesus, WTF? Know how people get silly over spiders? They see just one and they freak out and want to move, and it's stupid. BC, it's just a spider? Yeah, that's not the same as fucking yellow jackets. There is no way on this green earth I'd stay in that room once I'd actually disturbed those cheesecake. BC, they are ruthless about attacking, and also they send out distress signals when they're attacked, which means the other ones in the attic were probably ready to fight you. I can't believe you stayed skeptical. Yellow jackets are evil. If they find a nice spot like an insulated attic, or live in the south where it's hot all the time, their nest can keep growing year after year. A few years ago an older woman went outside to walk her dog and got swarmed by hundreds of them. She had a huge nest growing in one of her flower pots. Paramedics were eventually able to get to her, but she died in the hospital. Wow, terrible story. Making me realize I FU'd even worse by risking the night. I'm in bed under the covers as I read this. Thanks, now I'll feel like I have something crawling on my legs all night. TIFU by giving my GF a wedgie instead of taking her shirt off. Late post. This happened about a month ago. I just haven't had the time to post it. My GF had barely put our kid to sleep for the night and she came and was cuddling next to me watching TV. Cuddling led to one thing after another, and she started to give me head. We were laying on sides facing one another, but she was below me sucking me off, so I was stroking her back trying to take her shirt off. I had my eyes closed at the time, so I'm just grabbing at the fabric lifting it up, but it wouldn't budge. I suddenly feel my GF stiffen. She couldn't make much noise because my meat was still in her mouth. She's just pushing my arm away. I look down and see her eyes wide. I thought she was choking or something, and then I look further down and she has her undies far up her coconuts, the edge of them still in my hand. Thank God she has a good sense of humor and starts laughing at my banana up and tells me I can taste the cotton. DL, Doctor, I coconut up by giving my GF a wedgie instead of taking her shirt off. I'm happy for you that it didn't end with, and now I've got bite marks on my foreskin. I thought this was going to be it was a bodysuit story. I suddenly feel my GF stiff and she couldn't make much noise because my meat was still in her mouth. I've never had any trouble stopping myself while sucking cheesecake if I needed to say something. If you feel a sharp pain suddenly coming through, I imagine it would be hard not to bite. Thank Aphrodite she didn't panic bite. I thought she was choking on something. I see what you did there.